Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Best Training number one workshop. So first, we're going to go over some of the upcoming events. So March 11th is going to be the second of these Best Training workshops. And the 25th will be the third. And after that, we're going to have our air pollution panel. So keep an eye out for advertisements of who's going to be on that panel. On the 15th, we're going to start the small group training with state lawmakers with Patrick Lindsey and Elizabeth Cutter. On the 29th, we're going to be doing small group training for federal lawmakers with Patrick Lindsey and James Williams. And make sure you attend as many of these as possible. So if you want the opportunity to be able to actually meet with lawmakers. Next, Brianna is going to be talking about action groups.
Just a quick note, our air pollution panel is actually April 8th. It's going to be on a Thursday, just how every other event is. April 9th is a typo. So I'll put that in the chat, but just make sure you put in your calendars air pollution panel April 8th, Thursday at 1 to 2, just like all our other events.
Okay, everyone, I'm going to talk about action groups. My dog is acting up, so you're going to hear him barking in the background. I apologize. So the latest and greatest with the action groups is that we are actually going to be starting in April 1st. I know before we talked about starting March 1st, so that is going to give us a little bit more time to kind of get all of our ducks in a row and make sure that everything is perfect for you guys and perfect for our communities. With that being said, you should get an email from me either today or tomorrow with more information surrounding the action groups. We are still looking for leadership applications for student leaders. We have identified our faculty advisors, and we also developed a syllabus. So I will send that out. I'm also going to send an email out to everybody in SciPal Detroit with a sign up for the action group. So this is different than the interest form that you signed up for previously. So you'll get in the email more information about what is an action group, what is required of you if you're a member or a leader, what are the deliverables or action items that we're going to be working on. And so when you get an email, also there's going to be a Google link that says, hey, sign up for this, and you're going to only sign up for one action group. So when you sign up on this list, you are committed as a member. For those who are interested in the student leadership positions, still fill this form out. Perfect. You'll get an email. So yeah.
All right, so this leads into our talk for today. We are very excited to have Vice President Lindsey on, and he insisted that I call him Patrick from now on, which also sounds weird, but he's going to be giving his BEST training series, and this is a really exciting initiative that I think I actually did when I was a graduate student, but BEST stands for Broadening Experiences in Scientific Training. And from what I understand, it's actually an NIH initiative that broadens the scope of graduate and postgraduate training. So scientists, a lot of scientists become academics like myself, and really graduate training and scientific training is preparing students to go into academia, but that isn't necessarily what academics do. And I think that fits really nicely into what we do as SciPal Detroit, is that we're all interested in policy issues, and a lot of scientists do actually do policy issues, and that's very well needed. And this fits with everything we've been talking about, that scientists need a seat at the table. We need to learn how to communicate effectively with policymakers. So the BEST training series is really helping to broaden that view, and that includes policy training. And that's something that Patrick is going to be helping us with. So the next two workshops following today will be led by Patrick. If you want to go to the next slide, please. We're very excited to have him. He is the Vice President of Government and Community Affairs at Wayne State University. He is a Detroit native with more than 30 years of experience in corporate and nonprofit sectors. He joined Wayne State in his current position in 2012. In this position, he oversees federal and state affairs offices. So he works closely with James and Elizabeth, who we've already heard from. He works with federal, state, local elected officials to secure and enhance state appropriations and federal research funding for institutions for Wayne State and its 13 schools and colleges. He's also responsible for the Community Affairs Office, which actively engages the university into the greater Detroit community. So a lot of themes we've been talking about in this group. Prior to joining Wayne State, he served with Focus Hope as Director of External Affairs and Development. He also enjoyed a 20-year career at Chrysler, mainly as Senior Manager of State Relations and Manager of Community Relations. He holds a BA in Political Science from the University of Michigan. He lives in Detroit with his wife, Kathy, and children, Kendall and Kaylin. He also serves as pastor of Greater Bible Way Baptist Church in Detroit. So again, don't know how you guys fit all this in, but we are very excited to have you. We apologize for the snow on the first slide. We were talking about this offline. It's sunny today in Detroit. We want to embrace that moving forward. But Patrick, we're very excited to have you, so I will turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Hillary, and hello to everyone in Cy Paul, Detroit. Let me begin by expressing my appreciation for this opportunity to speak with you, to chat a little bit about advocacy and engagement in the political arena. I'm always excited to not only provide whatever information or inspiration that I can, but I'm also here to learn from you and to perhaps engage in a conversation that will be helpful and meaningful. I am always delighted to engage with our students. The reason that I'm here at Wayne State certainly is to handle my portfolio of responsibilities, but I always tell people I'm here for our students, grads, undergrads, you name it. All 27,000 or so students are the reason that we're here. And so I appreciate this opportunity. My presentation, I'm one who I welcome questions, I welcome interaction and comments. I even welcome criticism as long as it's kind. And so at any time during this particular presentation, let me know if you have a question. I can't see you all, but there are facilitators, I believe, that will help that. So I will gladly engage any questions. Also, just want to make note that our Director of Federal Affairs, James M. Williams, Jr., is also on and may chime in from time to time. I certainly welcome his input as well. So with that, I guess I will start my presentation unless there's a question or comment before I get started. Okay, well, I will proceed. And again, I will try not to be too long with the presentation itself because I'd love to interact with all of you. So today, really, this presentation is going to focus on what I call effective engagement. You know, when you talk about dealing with lawmakers, it's one thing to have access, but to have access is only a part of the issue. You need to have an effective strategy for how to engage a lawmaker's time. It is important to walk in the door with a game plan and hopefully leave out having been successful. I remember when I was introduced to my now wife of 29 years, it was a blind date and it was arranged. Trust me, before I engaged with her on that date, I had a game plan. I had it all mapped out. No matter which way it went, I had it mapped out. And my game plan one worked, obviously. So, but anytime you engage with others, a game plan is important. So I'm just going to talk a little bit there. As it's been said, Hillary noted that I serve as vice president of a division at the university charged with external relationships, the Division of Government and Community Affairs. We have key responsibility for connecting with policymakers in the public arena, as well as helping to lead the university in our engagement with community leaders, people who influence things on the ground in their respective communities. How can we take this wonderful entity of our university, all of its 13 schools and colleges, all of the research, all of the bright minds of our faculty and students, and engage those resources to make an impact on society, culturally, socially, economically, particularly in Metro Detroit and in the region. But what we do here at Wayne State has worldwide implications. We have studies that have been in 40 cities around the world through our perinatology research branch. We have people in key places all over the globe. And so this really is a global mission, but our main focus for my department is in community engagement, the Metro Detroit area in particular, and in our state and local government relations, Michigan, and our federal affairs in Washington, D.C. And our mission statement is there. We promote and advance the goals and strategic initiatives of the university through continued relationship buildings in the halls of government and in the community. It's been said, many of you, Hillary said she's an academic, and many of you may take an academic track, but be clear no matter which track you take, whether you work in academics or external of academics, relationship building is an asset as a skill set. And it can be one that you use professionally and personally. I think that it'll be very important to your careers to always look at how relationship building can be improved, something very key. And by the way, in this new world of Zoom and Teams, I think we'll be through this soon, and there will be a measure of remote connection that will remain. But I'm guaranteeing you, nothing will replace being in the room with other people and taking advantage of the opportunity to engage. And so I would love to be, by the way, in a classroom where we were all together. I get much more energy. I get much more insight. I could see your body language and react to it. So remember, relationship building, particularly in-person, interpersonal connections are important, particularly in our world of advocacy. Now, I have a small but mighty team. We have, as I mentioned, James on the ground in Washington, D.C., covering quite a bit of ground. Elizabeth Cutter directs our state affairs in Lansing. They both come to campus from time to time. We have Taylor Trott, who directs our government health affairs. So for the 4 health affairs related schools, medicine, nursing, pharmacy, and social work, she sort of handles a very specialized portfolio of issues. We are in the process of interviewing for a community affairs position. And unfortunately, these recent budget cuts took away a director position in my office. The good news is that they had accepted a new position at another organization prior to having to make the cut. So I didn't have to lay anybody off, but I certainly lost a very valuable key position in my group. We do have help on the ground in Lansing and in DC. We are currently under review for a new federal contract lobbyist, but we have Kelly Cawthorn as our state, and they just help us with access and strategy in both those cases. And again, don't hesitate to ask any questions at any time. In our group, we have 5 pillars of our work. They're outlined there for you. Advocacy, we acquire funds, we align the university with strategic partnerships, we articulate its mission, and we address issues of conflict. And you'll see that here as I outline these. We are essentially the group that goes in and advocates federal, state, and local issues. And we try to secure favorable legislation surrounding the work that we do. Funding is important for the university, not only for research and development, but we try to also do it for our state appropriations. Presently, the university gets about $207 million a year from the state to help support your learning. By the way, Michigan lags behind in funding of public education. Some of the tuition pressures that you feel is because of the disinvestment that has occurred at the state level in higher education over the past 20 years. And so we continue to fight in the arena for what is a very limited pie, but that's a part of our job, is to how can we grow the piece of pie in general for higher ed, as well as how to grow it for Wayne State. We align partnerships so we can extend, as I mentioned earlier, our reach into the community to make a difference through the university's many assets. A part of our job is communicating, not simply advocating, but communicating to key stakeholders in the arenas that we serve. The vision and mission, Dr. Wilson came in with a very keen vision and mission, particularly as it relates to student success. And we have been talking very widely and broadly about how graduation rates have increased. We've seen the greatest increase in the nation in graduation rates for a school like ours, a tier 1 research school, in the past 2 years. And we're publicly awarded for that improvement because that's something that Dr. Wilson saw as a key piece of his vision. And so we ensure that that's articulated so that people will know, particularly lawmakers and policymakers, you're getting something back for your investment in Wayne State. We're graduating students and they're going on to do great things. And lastly, we address issues of conflict, issues of complaint against the university that arise, particularly from the community. And we try to get mutually acceptable solutions to those issues. I'm a firm believer that there's no problem that doesn't have a mutually agreeable solution. The question is, are you willing to reach it? And that's always where the sticking points are. So let's get into the meat of our discussion today. And I'm really going to kind of look at this as, again, as a strategic level, but we will try to respond to anything that you might have relative to a question that might relate to a particular situation or scenario. Much of what you will hear has been drawn from our dear and late friend, Anita Estelle. She was the president and CEO of the Estelle Group. Unfortunately, Anita passed away last year, but she was our federal lobbying partner. She worked along with us probably for 7 years, side by side on our federal affairs portfolio. And within all of her great many talents, she wrote a book about engagement and empowerment of citizens. She talked about how to use collective action. And through our many discussions, much of what I use as this framework is drawn from Miss Estelle and her book, The Power of Us. And so I just wanted to give a nod out to her, and certainly in memory of what she brought to our team and to our work. So there are 7 basic things that we use to frame our strategic approach to effective engagement. It's the articulation of policy, or grant issues that we want, and how do we develop those. It's resource assessment. Do we have what we need to get over the finish line? Community outreach, ensuring that you have the right folks informed and engaged externally, how to reach out to the appropriate policymakers, building a coalition to address your issue. Do you have a media or strategic communication strategy? And then how do you get your policy adopted and implemented? So that's kind of the ground we're going to cover. And it'll only be a couple of slides for each of these. And we're going to start with policy and grant articulation and development. And we talk about policy, you know, really public policy is so important. People don't quite understand how important it is as it relates to the impact of your work or how resources get allocated. Policy tends to guide and govern where the money goes or what gets prioritized. And so it's important not only to write grants and to apply for funding, but it's important to know how to create good policy, because again, policy will dictate where the resources go. So when you're talking about policy or funding, you got to know, you know, what you want. What is it that you are really trying to achieve? What is it that you're passionate about? You got to have a position staked out. And when you know what it is you want, whatever that policy is or whatever that funding is, you got to be prepared to make a very specific request. You can't mix it with, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 different things. You need to be laser focused on what it is that you want or need with your request. And so that takes, again, some preparation, some thought. So before you even begin calling up to Lansing or out to DC, you need to know what it is that you want. And then, of course, all of you being students, you know about research. So research your issue. What issues or laws would you like to influence or change? Are there current laws governing your issue that you need to change? Or is this a new law that you'd like to see enacted? And understand whether others are engaged in that space. Are there other people who are already trying to implement the same law, or are there opposing laws or policies that are counter to yours that might negatively impact you? You got to understand what action has already been or not been taken. And of course, then when you make your request, know what the fiscal impact will be. You know, if it's a policy issue, if that policy will have a fiscal impact, you need to know what that impact will be, because there's going to always be that question of how is it going to be paid for? And so note this says the federal government, but that's also true at the state level, at the local level. How much will this cost me? By the way, sometimes the policies that you're advocating for will save money, not cost money. So you need to know all of that. And that's why doing your research is so very important. I know one of the things that James and I do when we're in Washington, D.C., and we're advocating, even if it's for a continuation or renewal of a grant, we need to know not only the cost, in fact, some of those grants already come with a cost attached, but we need to tell them what is the impact of the investment that they're making in us. So for instance, we have a $166 million grant for the perinatology research branch at Wayne State. It's the only entity of NIH that's outside of the Beltway. It's a very unique center. We've had it going on close to 20 years. The last 10 years have been worth 166 million in grant dollars, but that investment has created well over $1 billion worth of impact financially based on the research that's being done, the jobs that's been created, and the indirect financial impact of the outcomes of the research. And so you need to also try to do those kinds of cost benefit analyses, not only of how much it'll cost, even if there is a cost, but perhaps how much potential upside that your policy or your grant that you're trying to secure will have.
Hey, Patrick, I just wanted to say one
Yes,
quick
James.
point about that. As Patrick said, you do have to know the money, but one thing, and Patrick and I work very, very closely on getting the perinatology research branch. I mean, from Stanford, Harvard, Yale, Columbia, those universities desperately wanted that grant. One of the key factors was 25,000. There were 25,000 women, mostly low income, many of whom were ethnic minority, that would not have access to this NIH, not NIH quality, to NIH treatment in the prevention of early birth and also the treatment of preterm babies.
Thank you. Very powerful, James. Detroit is one of the cities with a city with one of the highest infant mortality rates in the country. And some of those statistics defy race, defy age, defy education or income status. But the fact of the matter is Detroit is a place where you have a group of women who now have, as James said, 25,000 in the first 10 years. And we think we'll have that same number in the second 10 years of NIH quality prenatal screenings, which is so important, that prenatal work, all because of this grant. And so we were very glad to be a part of working on this particular project for the university. And I can say some of these things get very personal because my wife's had experience with some of the same issues that the research was addressing. And to be able to know that women would potentially be able to avoid some of the issues that my wife had to face during some of her pregnancies is a joy. And to know not only is it a financial impact, but the quality of life that you're able to hope that people get. So that's why our work is so not only important, but it's so enjoyable. When we talk about doing your research, you got to share that research. And this is where you all as academics have to be very careful. James and I set up a series of meetings with Department of Defense. James, it was a few areas we went to. I know we went to the Office of Naval Research and a few others, but we took a whole team from Wayne State, about 10 people. We had about 5 people teed up to share their research capabilities and to perhaps try to draw interest from these respective departments. Listen, a 200 slide presentation with all writing, small font isn't always going to make it. It's all great research, it's all factual, but we need to know how to distill our work to white papers or one pagers. You need that presentation for the right time. And I would suggest 100, 200 slide presentation under no circumstances is acceptable in a policy pitch. But you should be able to distill your issue down to one page, well written, have another document, maybe that's more of an executive summary or a white paper, but visually attractive, graphs and charts, comparative levels of funding, any relevant data. Those are powerful because they give the member or the chiefs of staff or the other staffers who are working on it information they'll need. By the way, you have to understand that there are hundreds of people coming in with issues, if you give me a set of binders, I'm not going to be able to read all those binders because I'm one legislative aide handling hundreds of people and hundreds of issues. However, you may have that one pager on a binder, and that one pager can help me distill things. It will help me to develop questions. I can go into the background material if I need to, or I can even call you with that question. So all of your research, you need to distill it down. And, there are some other templates we talk about, what's the background, what's the issue, what's the recommended action, what's the rationale or justification for the request, and any next steps. And again, by the way, all of you out there, I'll be sure to share this presentation. I'll send it to Hillary and it'll be dispersed so you can have it. And that way you can use these tips. So you got to be able to develop your policy. Resource assessment. It's important to know what resources are available or may be needed to support this effort that you're trying to do. So if you're going to do outreach, what resources do you need? If you're going to educate folks, not only lawmakers, but are you going to need to educate others outside of the Hill or the Lansing area? How are you going to develop these materials? Will it have a cost? Do you need a staff of people working on this issue? Some people say, well, why would I need a staff? With proposal, I forget if it was proposal A for the arts that the DIA was trying to get. They had a whole regional team working together, and they had to actually have a staff of people to work on that issue. So staffing might sometime be what you need. Equipment, travel, office expenses, and there are some lobbying expenses that some issues do rise to the level of having to engage a lobbying firm. The good news for you all at Wayne State, if it's a Wayne State issue, you already have James in DC, you have Elizabeth in Lansing. Certainly I'm here to just kind of orchestrate and do the conductor thing. But again, we don't all have all of the resources you might need, but we're here to help. And so use us as a resource. But when you make that assessment, create a budget. And that way you can know what it's going to cost you to advocate for your position. I believe this is the third or fourth bullet, excuse me, in the strategic approach on engagement is to do community outreach. There is strength in numbers. It was said that I serve as a pastor, I do, and one of my favorite scriptures says that 2 is better than 1. And then it says a 3-strand cord is not easily broken. And basically it's distilling that idea that there is strength in numbers. If you go it alone on whatever your policy issue or even your funding issue, you have less of a chance. But when you can engage other stakeholders or people who have similar interest in whatever your policy concern is or your funding priority is, you can leverage that to get access to certain lawmakers or to get the impact that you're looking for. And so again, this is where you want to ensure that you understand your issue and others understand your issue. And so you need to develop what we call clear, well-written talking points. We do this a lot when we have to engage members of our board or members of the faculty or members of the university on issues in Lansing. We provide them with the talking points so that they will understand what to say when asked. And you don't need to know all of the background and the drop. I learned in media training, if you have 3 points, and no matter what the question is, always come back to one of those 3 points with your answer. That's the way you do it. It's not to be evasive, but you have talking points that you want to get across. Make sure you can distill those down, not only for you to use in meetings, but for others that you want to engage in the process. And notice what it said at the bottom, promoting separate agendas dilutes impact. You can't have people who you bring in to help advocate for your issue bring up their own issue. Nope, you need to stay focused on the issue. By the way, and James can correct me if I'm wrong, you need to plan for 15-minute meetings with the member. You may have 30 minutes on the calendar or even an hour, but you may want to plan your meeting for 15 minutes and understand, well, I'll talk about a little bit more of that later when we talk about the member meeting, but understand that you want to plan for about 15 minutes. And I'll get to that here shortly. So in community outreach, we have what we call grassroots. These are the people who are on the ground. They're passionate, they're mobilized. Some of the best advocates are people who are affected by the policy that you're trying to change, improve, or get rid of. You want to ensure that those people are engaged. We call those the grassroots folk. And then the grass top folk. You want to get your influencers, people who sit in seats of influence, locally or nationally, and leverage their positions. And I'll give you an example of that. We have an issue right now. I won't go into the detail of the issue, but we have an issue with Children's Hospital of Michigan and access of some of our pediatricians to practice or to have privileges at Children's Hospital. Most of y'all know that Children's Hospital is a very important place. When children get ill, you want them to go where they focus and specialize on children's issues. Long story short, this access has nothing to do with the quality of our docs. In fact, our doctors have been the backbone of children's for decades. It's all a fight that is based on business issues with the current owner of the DMC, which is Tenet. However, my point is this business issue is affecting Detroit residents, parents with children whose doctors are Wayne State pediatricians who now no longer, that parent can't go to Children's Hospital and get care from their Wayne State pediatrician. That is what you call something that affects the community. And so while there's an issue with Wayne State and DMC and Tenet, we have to mobilize people who this affects as well. A parent with a child with unique health issues and get the grassroots involved in your issue, as well as the grass top. So you talk to the local pastors, you talk to healthcare officials or organization, leaders of organizations in healthcare or nonprofit, and talk about this as a community issue. So you get grassroots and grass tops into your issue. Now, Policymaker Outreach, and this is where we talk about that meeting. And notice, again, because Anita, when she developed her outline, she talked about Washington, but this is Washington, this is Lansing, this is downtown Detroit and City Hall. If you're going to win, you got to have some champions, you got to have supporters, you got to know who it is that's going to carry your water to see your issue through. You got to know what lawmaker is going to be the one, either based on their interests, be it based on them representing my district, or any number of reasons. You're going to have to find that champion. And that person will have to have the ability to see your issue through until you get it over the finish line. And it says, ideally, you at least need one, on a federal level, you want to have a member in the House and a member in the Senate. In the state level, same way, because if you know how laws are made, right? Laws are made in both chambers. You have one bill in the House, one bill in the Senate, then they come together in what's called conference committee, and then you have a bill. It's not that easy or simple, but that's the abbreviated version. And so you want at least to have one person on both sides whether it's an appropriation, a competitive grant, or regulatory relief. That's what you want, is you want people on both sides. And the best champions is to get somebody who's a chair of a committee or a subcommittee, get a ranking member or the leaders of the party, get members who are undergoing hotly contested races because they're more incentivized to get some wins, or certainly those who have good connections with the White House. And right now we're dealing with an issue where we're calling the vice chair of a very important appropriations committee, our very own Brenda Lawrence, into an issue. Because of her prominence, this is huge to have her as one of the ranking members of her party, as well as a vice chair of a appropriations committee, to be engaged. And so that's very, very important. Now, I want you to talk, I'm going to go back to that meeting again. When you walk in, you need to know who you're meeting with. Remember, 15 minutes, right? So your 30 minutes may be on the calendar, an hour may be on the calendar, but I've been in meetings where the lawmaker walks in and 5 minutes later, staff says they're voting and you need you back over across the street in chambers. And so if you haven't gotten to your issue, you might not get to your issue. So these meetings are short and sweet. That's why I always say plan 15 minutes. Most of the time you will get at least that 15 minutes. 30 minutes is a luxury. If the meeting's on your schedule for an hour, you can believe that the member will likely not be there for the entire hour. If you get that member in the room, 15 minutes. And James will let you know. James is a former chief of staff for many members of Congress, but particularly he worked with the late great John Lewis as a chief of staff. He's also been chief of staff for our very own Curlin Cheeks Kilpatrick and several other members. James will let you know meeting with him might be even just as important, if not more important, than meeting with the member, because James is the traffic cop. That chief of staff is the person who might be the one talking to the member about your issue. And if you don't connect with them, you may miss your whole point.
Yep.
So
yeah, I just want to jump in and say Patrick is 100% right. And I just want to let Hillary and Ms. Desai, we didn't write our remarks, me, nor Elizabeth, nor Patrick, in concert with one another. Even though we wrote them 3 separate ways, we're all saying the same thing. 15-minute meetings. Know whom you're going to meet with and make that meeting matter. And as a chief of staff, as a former chief of staff to several members of Congress, I cannot emphasize how key that is. Patrick's absolutely right. The member will come in and then the member may have to leave. And then say, you know what, James is going to handle the issue anyway. Members have to deal with, on average, I mean, hundreds of issues. The first call, Patrick's absolutely right, that I made regarding this issue that we're focused on wasn't to Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence, although I have her number. I talked to the chief of staff. Hey, you know, we need this issue. We have to take care of this because the Congresswoman is only going, just tell me what I need to know. Are we good or are we not good? We're good. Okay. Then the chief of staff will make the phone call, get the letter drafted, the Congresswoman will sign it, and think things move along that way. But Patrick is saying this, and Elizabeth, my colleague, also said the same thing. 15 minutes, make it, you know, I said, get on, get in, get out. But you have to maintain that relationship with the staffer. And finally, you just got to make it easy for the staffer. Don't say we need a letter written and don't have the letter written. You know, no, they don't have time to draft your letter. They don't have time to get the address. When you give them the letter, it's going to have the address to whom it needs to go to, the phone number, their email, and you're going to draft it out. So all that staffer has to do is edit it, get it in, and get it done. That way your issue will be handled.
Thank you, James. Very powerful. You heard it straight from the guy who makes it happen for us. When you go in, having done that research, right, know who your lawmaker is, know their district, where they grew up or where they serve right now, if they're on certain committees, whether they're Democrat or Republican, know what their hot button issues are, know whether they're conservative or liberal, have relevant personal stories. Are they sensitive to rural, suburban, or urban issues? I'm gonna tell you this, you may be a staunch Republican and you're meeting with a Democratic lawmaker, or you may be a staunch Democrat and be meeting with a public lawmaker. You may be liberal, you may be meeting with a conservative. When you go into those meetings, take all of those labels off and deal with your issue on the merits of the issue. You will likely get some of that partisan stuff back from the lawmaker, but as a person in the meeting, you stay focused on your issue, not on the politics, because the politics will muddy the water. But you need to know, walking in the door, the politics. You need to know where they stand, but be prepared to stay focused on your issue and know how to craft your issue in a way that's appealing to their politics.
Yep.
There are ways to do that.
No permanent friends, no permanent enemies. What is it, Patrick? Just permanent interests. That's it.
So thank you, James. Very quickly, I'm going to bring this on home. Know the calendar, know the congressional calendar. Congress, the White House, agencies, they have calendars of specific events, budget submissions. James knows that budget calendar, so he knows when to take stuff in for Wayne State, and he'll do it 3 weeks earlier than everybody else because he knows that if I get it in on top, mine will be seen, mine will likely be done, and when I send it in, I'm going to do all the work. All they have to do is carry it from there. Know the congressional hearings, the markups, the floor action, and that's why, again, you may not know all that, but there are people who know that, so you can find that out. And if you're seeking what we call authorization language, this means this is putting money to the issue. Make sure you give yourself time for the bill to be introduced or an amendment to be offered as a part of the legislation being fast-tracked. So again, that's why you have people like James and Elizabeth out there. If all this sounds like a foreign language or it seems strange to you, it should, because they're paid to do it, so you have a resource in them. And lastly, on the Policymaker Outreach, understand where the President of the United States stands on the issue. His administration will have a role in articulating the vision and broad policy recommendations. And those recommendations, so you know the Biden administration's stance on climate. So if you have climate impacting issues that are favorable to those issues that they espouse, much better chance of your issue getting heard. Coalition building, there are other universities that we work with all the time. We work with universities that are urban serving. We work with universities that are tier 1 research. We work with universities that are that have medical schools. You know, whatever the coalitions are, you can get together on issues that affect you all, and that is a much better way of getting your issue done. We are a part of the Association of Public Land Grant Universities, better known as APLU. We are a part of the Council of State Governments. We are part of several other American Association of State Colleges and Universities, other organizations that we work with for good policy. At the state level, we are part of the Michigan Association of Colleges and Universities, better known as MASU. But these groups, we work together with not only higher ed groups, business groups, the Business Leaders for Michigan, the Detroit Chamber, to support a candidate or a cause. Coalitions are important. They're important at all levels. They maximize our impact. And Anita had a formula that she always called N-Peace. N being the number, peace, the acronym, persons engaged and affected changes everything. So the more people you can get together on issues that affect them, that ability to change. The reason that AARP is the largest and strongest lobbying group is because the number of people engaged and affected by being seniors changes everything. And they have a loud and proud voice. Media communications and strategy. Some issues require certain levels of media. to educate folk, to create awareness. And you can use, you know, traditional media like radio, print, and television, but social media can be your friend. It's a much lower cost usually to use it. And it can be as, if not more effective in getting your issue out there. We just saw a president, no matter what you think about him, and I'm not getting to the politics here, who used Twitter in a way that was far more powerful than you've seen any candidate before or since use it. He took advantage of a platform and he used it to his advantage. He reached an exponential number of people in real time, and that will change politics forever. And so you got your letter writing, your emails, your postcards, your billboards, your lawn signs, but certainly that social media space is one to not sleep on. And lastly, policy adoption and implementation. The goal of getting in the arena is to finish what you start, to get officials to do what they've been elected to do, and to get your way, hopefully, in terms of having a law codified or to get certain funding. And you might still have to do some additional work. If it's a policy issue, you may still have to go get the funding. You may still have to look at ways to get things implemented. And so you want to ensure that as you look at it, you understand whether there are some follow-up pieces. If what you're getting done is very small, make sure it's scalable and that it's sustainable, because you want, if it's good policy, you want it to spread, you want it to grow, you want it to be something that others can use it as a model to build on. So again, the 7 basic rules, I just repeat them here. Research and develop your policy, assess what you need to get it done, know the people who it affects, and make sure you get them engaged in the process. Reach out to your policymaker, build a coalition of those with similar interests, have a strategy to communicate it. And once you get the policy adopted and implemented, you know, how will it best be served going forward? And with that, I will engage any questions or comments that any of you might have at this time. And by the way, my email address is just my name with a dot in it. And that number is still being monitored at the university. So if you need to contact me after this, please do so. But I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
I just want to say, wow, that was amazing. And we only have a couple minutes, but rest assured we have Patrick for 2 more meetings. So if you have any questions that aren't able to be answered here, he has his email address that we'll distribute. We'll distribute all the slides. And I just wanted to mention, Patrick, this is perfect. This is exactly what we needed. You know, working with your office to have this group be in front of lawmakers this spring, really preparing us on those, you know, up to 3 issues that we're going to talk about and decide as a group, and work with your office on how we can actually make a change. And I just wanted to mention that back to the whole idea of B.E.S.T, that most of us in the meeting are scientists or students of science. We aren't trained to talk to lawmakers. We're not trained to talk to the public. We're trained to talk to other academics. And like the whole idea of a white page is totally different for a lot of folks. And I think, you know, the more trainings we could have in that area would be really helpful in the future. And again, working with your office and learning how to craft those messages, we're very excited for that.
I think I'll focus on developing that kind of message during the next talk. We'll talk a little bit more about that. I see there are a couple of questions in the chat. One asked about what would be a good resource to find pieces of legislation that are currently in the pipeline. Well, my team, we use what's called GONWERS, which tracks not only issues, but legislation. We use, I think, James, is it Politico? That we use at the federal level to track legislation, but there are software applications that we use. But you can also find, you can just go on the legislative websites and you can find all the legislation that's being proposed right there on the Michigan.gov or Michigan House of Representatives or the Senate website. All the legislation is there, as well as the calendar. You'll find the calendar there in terms of hearings and things of that nature. When you talk about schedule for budget submissions, you're talking about those being departmental, usually in nature. So when you're submitting certain budget for like the Department of Health and Human Services, you need to perhaps go to the department's website to find very specific issues on budget submission. But the governor's overall budget, if you're talking about something that's going to be a line item in the governor's budget, and then of course the governor recommends, and the legislators, they are the ones who end up with the appropriation, if you will. The governor drops her budget usually in February, which she just did a few weeks ago. And so her recommendation's already out there. Now it's in the House and the Senate being debated. And trust me, budgets discussions are, there's a state law that says they need to be done by a certain time. Right now, they blew by that last time, and I think they're going to blow by it again. I think June 30 is supposed to be the day. We probably won't have a budget till September 30th, if things are good.
Awesome.
Somebody's saying, yeah, Ms. Hunter mentioned about the what we call that 30-minute elevator speech, if you will. Plain language, no jargon, straight to the point, no acronyms. Absolutely one of the things that we advise folks to use.
Perfect.
Hillary, I think you were going to ask something or say something.
Oh, I was just going to say it's 2 o'clock. So I think we'll gather some of those links from James and Elizabeth. I think you guys provided us with some before, but we'll recirculate them to the SciPol email address. And I just wanted to thank you so much again, Patrick. We will send out information from him and his slides, but we appreciate everyone's time and thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to hearing from many of you if you do have further questions.